Hey guys, and welcome back to the garden. I have a new camera and I have no idea how to work it, but I wanted to use it because the screen is so much better and the colors are better, and it's weird because the viewfinder video is over here instead of on top like it was in this camera. So it's gonna take a little while to get used to it, but I wanted to use it for the first time today. I'm so happy. Let me show you this poor thing that I've been using for the past year, and how beat up it is. So this is the Canon G7X. It is bad. So these screws fell out and got lost. So this has been duct taped for a while, just to be able to keep this up so that I can see myself while I record. But oftentimes, because it's been so messed with, I see myself upside down. It's a whole thing. This no longer closes. I've got a ton of dust inside this lens right here, and it has been through the works. And it still works just fine. I only have one SD card, so I currently can't use them both, but I do plan on using this for like landscape shots or B-roll or something while I use my new camera, which is a Canon M50 EOS Mark II. It's so awesome. I'm so excited. It's not like a super expensive camera or anything. It actually costs a little bit more than this point and shoot. But it was my gift to myself after 1,000 subscribers, was to get a new camera, and it was sorely needed because editing my videos for you guys, sometimes I would just see smudges on the lens or glares from the dust, and I just like, oh, I'm so sorry guys. But all of y'all got me to 1,000 subscribers, and I'm so happy and so thankful. And I hope that the mic I have on this camera is working right now, because if I shoot this whole video and it's unusable, I'm going to cry a lot. So obviously we are in the garden, and today I'm going to be harvesting peppers. I do know I have some Armenian cucumbers to grab too, maybe a few tomatoes, although I've been pretty up on those lately, so that shouldn't be too bad. But mostly peppers. There are quite a few in here that are ripe, and I've been waiting to like let more ripen so I could do a big pepper haul with you guys. And then if I have time, because I don't know how long that's gonna take, I'm gonna take them inside and do at least one batch of fermenting peppers with you, since you've been requesting videos on how I preserve my stuff. Peppers are largely fermented or dried in this house because I love fermented pepper salsa. But let me grab a basket and we'll get started. Well, I just decided we'll use this 5-gallon bucket because I am not fancy. But I have so many Armenian cucumbers in here that are huge. That's no longer a cucumber. That is a melon. So I need to do a harvest of these guys. They have just exploded over this summer. And I'm super thankful, don't get me wrong. It's just so hard to keep up with them. When I pick them small as cucumbers, I obviously get a lot more because they just keep putting out fruit at a quicker pace. And I think I have 10 cucumbers currently inside my fridge. They're in my fridge because I can't pickle them fast enough or do anything with them. And so I'm trying to store them as long as possible. They do store better in the fridge with some humidity. Otherwise they just get soft and shrivel up. So let's get to picking these guys. That took up more space than I was expecting. So here in this pepper bed we have mostly banana peppers, padron peppers, some green chilies, and I have 2 shishito plants right here. Now the shishitos are going to be the most prolific. I haven't picked any shishitos since the last time we were out here and did a garden harvest. And then some of these padrones need to be picked. They're getting red. Those will definitely go in the salsa. The only peppers I'm going to put in the salsa are going to be the hot peppers like Sugar Rush Peach or Padron or Thai hot peppers. I might add some, like a couple pieces of banana pepper for like substance if I don't have enough to fill a jar. But otherwise, I use strictly 100% hot peppers in my fermented hot sauce. So the peppers have started to come on a little bit stronger than last time we spoke. As I explained, they kind of ramp up in the summer heat when everything else is suffering. They had a bit of a slow start this year. I probably, most likely, planted them out a little early when it was still a little too cold. But we had cool weather, unusually cool weather this spring that lasted longer than it usually does. And I wasn't gonna just sit around and let my plants get huge inside under the grow lights. But we have a long enough growing season here in the desert Southwest that it's not too much of an issue because the peppers will eventually catch up. It's like a little forest in here. Oh, where'd you go? There we go. These shishito peppers are just not performing as well as the other plant. I don't remember if I said this in the last video, but I don't think I'm going to save any peppers off of this particular one. They're so small. They're usually about twice this size. And they're even ripening this small. It's not that I'm picking them early or anything. They're starting to turn red, which is their final color, and they're still very tiny. So I don't know what's going on with this one. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you just have a bad plant, or not that this is bad, I'm still getting food off of it, but it's not always something that you do as a gardener. Compared to this shishito plant, which is marginally bigger, not the biggest I've ever seen, but I mean the plant itself is way larger than the last one. I have quite a few banana peppers on here as well, although this may look yellow. I'm not sure how it's going to translate on the camera, but it's still slightly a limeish green color, and they're not ready at this point. They're definitely edible, but their best flavor comes out when they are this bright yellow, even possibly with some more maturing red. Let me see if I can put this guy. Oh yeah, some more red right here on the edges. That's when you know they're actually truly ready. This is another padron pepper plant. As you can see, I'm just picking off the red ones. The green ones can be spicy, although on the small green side, they tend to be less hot. So I wait until they get fully red and then use them as such. But like I said, if you like not spicy peppers, these are technically supposed to not be spicy like a shishito in their young green stages. Back here, we have an unknown. I see the tag. Where are you? I think. Yep. I don't know what this pepper plant is. I think it might be a green chili, a hatch green chili, but they're really small. So I'm not quite sure which one this is. They're getting, okay, so this one's pretty large. I think it might be a green chili plant, which would be amazing because look at all of these chilies. Woohoo! It looks like I do have some tomatoes to pick, but we'll get those last because I don't want them in the bottom of the barrel where they can get squished. So here we are with the Sugar Rush peach bed. I have some ripening here. You see they're supposed to be a peachy color. Like that, but they have been ripening so slowly and I don't know why. Most of them are still yellow like this. And I only pull off one or two every couple days that have actually fully ripened. I was hoping to be able to make a salsa purely out of Sugar Rush peaches. They're just not ripening quick enough so that I can get a whole bunch at once to use. So, I don't know. I've never grown these. This is an experiment. I'm definitely going to save seeds though for next year, because these plants are loaded. They're just not ripening. And now we're on to the jalafuego plants, which, if you haven't been here before, is a hotter version of a jalapeno. They tend to be a little on the small side from what I've found this year. They don't get super big and long and thick like the peppers you'd find in the store. They're tiny. They're a little too small to make like jalapeno poppers. I guess you could. You'd have to use only like half a piece of bacon though. This is about the largest that I've found that I've ever picked. And then they start getting the cracking and they'll turn red after this. So they don't get too big, and this one has bug damage. That stinks. I'll take them inside anyways. And here are my mini chocolate bell peppers, which are not chocolate. They're some sort of reddish color. They're supposed to ripen to a brown. I have a feeling, because this was my own saved seed, I have a feeling that they cross-pollinated with something that was red last year, maybe a padron pepper, or any pepper, honestly, because most of the peppers that I grow ripen to a red. But they aren't spicy, and most all of the peppers that I grow are spicy, so that's a little interesting that if they did cross-pollinate, they didn't become a spicy version. Here we have a Thai hot pepper plant, which is completely loaded. This plant is famous for being completely loaded. I do wait until they turn red to pick them. This is a really hot little pepper. If you've ever eaten like Chinese food and you've seen these dried in your noodles, that's exactly what they are. I don't use them a whole lot for fresh eating. I don't make a lot of Oriental food, but we do dry them, and they make an excellent spice powder. Oh my goodness, guys, this is the habanada pepper that I thought was not going to make it, and I have 2 little fruits here. I am so excited about this pepper plant. It had such a slow start, but it has picked up and it has a few fruits. And the habanada is a not spicy version of the habanero. And the habanero itself has an excellent flavor, which is why they probably made a not spicy version of it, because it's super hot and it's hard to enjoy the flavor when it's so spicy. But I'm gonna get to, yay! So this is what I've got. Not too many, but definitely enough for today's video to ferment a hot sauce. It makes me extremely uncomfortable to reach my hand into this forest. And one last guy right here. Ugh. Ugh. I hate bugs. A little bit of blossom end drop, but I can cut that off. I'll just use it for fresh eating. And I've got a few more estivas in here. Shoot. I wasn't expecting to harvest this many tomatoes today. Alright guys, let's get this bounty inside and make some fermented hot sauce. Alright guys, it is hot out there. We are back in the kitchen with our peppers that we are just going to wash off, get all the dirt off. The fun thing about fermentation is that it actually uses the natural bacteria already found in your plants. But, of course, we don't want to try and ferment dirt. And just making sure they're clean and free of debris, it makes it certain that you're not going to have anything go terribly wrong with your ferment. I could have used a bigger colander for this, but it's currently filled with grapes because I have not processed all of those grapes yet. Just a light washing. I'm not going to soap them down or use vegetable soap or anything like that. I don't even have vegetable soap. Like I said, you want the natural bacteria to work for the ferment and help it along. let's get these to the table where I will start cutting them up and discuss fermentation with you. So here in my hot sauce, fermented hot sauce recipe, I'm just using a smorgasbord of hot peppers. I've got jalapenos here, pimiento de padrones, sugar rush peach peppers. I also picked a couple ripening pepperoncinis just as a filler. And I think I have one red chili in here and a couple Thai hots. These are gonna make it really spicy. But while I cut these up into manageable bite-sized pieces, and I hope I have enough to fill this quart-size mason jar. If not, I'll bring it back down to a pint, but I think I picked enough to fill this quart jar. I'm gonna talk about fermentation, and I am no expert, although I do a lot of fermenting. And this is going to be kind of just like an overview of fermentation, not so much an in-depth thing. I'm sure this video is already going to be fairly long as it is. And I'm just gonna talk about it enough to educate some of you who may have never done it before or are scared to do it, because it is absolutely not a scary thing to do once you've done it once or twice. It is one of, if not the safest way to preserve vegetables. What I'm doing here is I'm getting out most of the seeds, not because I don't want it to be hot. The heat of a pepper isn't actually in the seeds, it's in the pith. So the white stuff inside of a pepper. This white pith right here, that's actually where most heat is found in a pepper. But I just don't want the seeds to cloud up my brine and just be everywhere, because once it's submerged in the saltwater brine, all these seeds are just gonna separate from the peppers and be floating all over the place. So I do tend to get most of the seeds out when I cut up my peppers. And I just have the little bowl right here for the chickens that I put all of my ends and stems in. Now, because we are dealing with live organisms and bacteria, like I said, fermenting is very safe, but just to keep it on the safer side, you want to use the freshest vegetables you have. Now, this vegetable is fresh, if not a little wrinkly. It's just a little overripe and it's been sitting on my counter for a couple days. I have used peppers like this to ferment before. It's fine. I'm probably not going to use it today, just for the sake of showing you guys the best way to do this. But fermentation. So the fermentation we are discussing when we talk about vegetable fermentation is going to be called lactic acid fermentation, or lactofermentation for short. And there are other kinds of fermentation. There's acetic acid fermentation, making vinegar, or ethanol fermentation, making alcoholic drinks. But when you're fermenting vegetables, the fermentation that takes place is lactic acid fermentation. And that is because the environment you create within your jar or whatever that you're fermenting in creates an environment for bacteria that produce lactic acid to thrive. And that is what gives it its tangy, kind of sour flavor that you can smell. If you don't like sauerkraut or true pickles, which are actually fermented, not just pickled in vinegar, they always have a sour, tangy flavor, and that's because of the lactic acid. Now, that lactic acid that is produced by those specific bacteria is precisely what makes your ferment safe to eat when it's been sitting in a brine for 2 or 3 weeks just in a corner of your house. Now, a lot of you who have never fermented before may shy. Oh, I rubbed my nose and it was hot. That's spicy. This is gonna be spicy. Ooh. So a lot of you that may have never fermented before or don't know anything about it may balk at the fact that you are letting vegetables sit in water at room temperature for several weeks or days. And I can see where that may sound gross. I mean, these days you let food sit out for a day or two and you start start to have mold growing on it. But the way that fermentation works is it occurs in stages. Oh, goodness, this is spicy. So when you ferment, you are soaking your vegetables in an anaerobic environment. Anaerobic meaning no oxygen. They do have to be under the brine without any oxygen. If you introduce oxygen to it, that is where you get the bad bacteria that start to take hold. That's where you'll get mold. But in order for this to work, it has to be in an anaerobic environment. So the vegetables have to be submerged. And they are submerged in a slightly salty brine. Now that brine is made up of water and salt in a ratio of salt by weight of the total jar. So when I have this jar full of peppers, I'm going to add water to it and minus the weight of the jar, get the total weight of the water and the peppers. And the safe spot of salinity for your water is between 2 and 5%. 5% is on the high end. That will make some really salty stuff. I've never done 5%. Generally, the recommendation is 2 on the low end or 2.5% by weight. And I usually do 2.5%. I've never had an issue with my food being salty or anything. But the salt is the second part of this equation that makes it safe. So when you first start your ferment in 1 to 2 days, there are bad bacteria in everything, just like there's good bacteria. And in those first 1 to 2 days, the bad bacteria that are aerobic, meaning they need oxygen, will die off because you have vegetables submerged underwater and they need oxygen to survive. So that is the first stage of fermentation. Those 1 to 2 days, all those bad bacteria that require oxygen to survive, they're done. Then you have the lactic acid bacteria producing lactic acid start to thrive. And what makes them thrive above other bad bacteria that still may be present, that still might like an anaerobic environment, is the salt. So you're giving a 1-2 punch to the bad bacteria by creating an oxygenless environment and creating a saltwater brine. That encourages all those lactic acid bacteria to live and produce at their heart's content. So in the second stage of fermentation, all of these lactic acid bacteria, ooh, this was the, I don't want to use this. This was the jalapeno that I showed you guys what I picked that had bug eaten. It looks good to eat, honestly. I'll probably use some of these pieces. Yeah, I'll use that, but the part that was bit by the bug, I'm not going to be using. Sorry, squirrel. They start producing lactic acid, and that is what gives your ferment a sour taste. In the production of their lactic acid, they also create carbon dioxide, which makes your ferment bubbly and causes your ferments to release gas. This is why if you've ever seen fermentation weights or like fermentation tops that have a hole to let gas escape, that's because they produce so much carbon dioxide that if you completely seal your fermentation jar, it might explode. And then as the ferment progresses over time and the lactic acid bacteria continue to thrive and produce, you get a more flavorful ferment. So you can ferment anywhere from between 3 days to several weeks. And it is all going to be dependent on how you like your ferments to taste. There are some people, I'm not one of them, but there are some people that like a really, really strong fermented tangy taste. And you can let your ferments go for literal weeks on end and it will just continue to get more flavorful in that way. Now I do like my ferments kind of tangy, especially in hot sauce, but I only usually let them go for about a week. And that's also going to be dependent on how hot it is in my house. In the winter, they might go longer. In the summer, it might be shorter. It might only be a couple days. There's a sweet spot of temperature where the lactic acid bacteria will thrive. If it's cooler, they produce more slowly. If it's warmer, it's more quickly. That is why when you have a ferment that you're happy with, that you want to be done, you put it in the fridge. And that doesn't kill the bacteria. The bacteria still remain alive. It just kind of slows them way down. It slows to small levels your fermentation. It will still ferment over time in your fridge, but negligibly. Like it'd have to be in there for months for you to get a really fermented taste. So if your house is on the cooler side or the warmer side, you would just adjust your length of time dependent on that. Now you don't have to worry about adding any sort of bacteria to colonize your ferment. Lactic acid bacteria is present on all vegetables. It's present on our skin. This is so spicy, my nose is burning. So all you need is salt, water, and your vegetables that are freshly washed from your garden. Now when you use water, you want unchlorinated water. If you live in a city and you use city tap water, it's most likely 100% chlorinated, and I recommend you either buy some sort of water. You don't want like a purely sterile water, but buy some sort of spring water or something somewhere, or you can pour your water from a sink into like a bucket and leave it out for 24 hours. That will allow the chlorine to evaporate. But if you use chlorinated water in your ferments, there's a high likelihood that that chlorine will just kill the bacteria, which is not what we're going for, because we need the bacteria to ferment our vegetables for us. And then the salt you use, you do want to use non-iodized salt. So normal table salt is usually iodized. Iodine is an antibacterial and antifungal. So you also don't want to use ordinary table salt for your ferments. It again may just kill your bacteria. Now, this is no hard and fast rule. I know people that have fermented just fine with city water and iodized salt. But on the whole, it's generally unsuccessful with either of those things. So anything like kosher salt, sea salt, just a natural salt that contains no anti-caking agents and no iodine. And then I have well water, so I don't have to worry about chlorine in my water. As for the vessels you use, it can be anything. What you don't want to use is plastic. First off, plastic is terrible for you. It leaches tons of chemicals. You shouldn't be using it anyways. But the lactic acid and the plastic may react negative. The lactic acid and the plastic may react negatively with each other. The lactic acid will start to break down the metals. Will start to break down the plastic. And the same goes for metals. So this is a glass mason jar. Glass is completely safe, but I don't use the mason jar tops that are the silver ones with the rings. I have plastic mason jar tops that I bought strictly for fermenting and pickling. Just so the vinegar for the pickling and the lactic acid from the fermenting doesn't react with the metal tops. Glass is a great vessel, any kind of glass. You don't have to use a mason jar. You can use any jar you have around your house. There are specific fermentation crocks that look like, by crock I mean some sort of like ceramic pot, that are beautiful. They use them a lot to make large volumes of like kimchi and sauerkraut. I don't have one of those, but that's perfectly fine as well. You obviously probably, I don't know technically about this. I would say no. My brain tells me it's probably not a good idea. No wood. Obviously, wood isn't very good at holding liquid, and not to mention it's breathable. So you are trying to create an anaerobic or oxygenless environment. You don't want anything that breathes. I'm gonna add just a couple more of these pepperoncinis, and then I think we'll be done. And I'll have to wash my hands because I keep touching my face and my face is on fire. So here I have all my peppers cut up into relatively the same size pieces. It's not a hard and fast rule. They don't have to be exactly uniform, but it does allow the brine to touch all equally and them to ferment at an equal pace. And what I want to do next is weigh my fermentation vessel, because I'm going to subtract the weight of this glass when I get the total weight of the water and the peppers that I'm using. Let's change this to ounces. I like working in grams. 418 grams. And now we're just gonna add our peppers to the jar. You do want to pack this down, get as much air out as possible. But it doesn't matter if they fill the top of the jar. What matters at the end of the day is that they are completely submerged underneath water. And that looks like it was almost perfect. Probably a couple more peppers, but otherwise that looks great. Great job, Megan. Okay, now I'm gonna add some water to this jar, about wherever the top of the peppers are after I've squished them down is about where I'm gonna add water to, so this first lip. So now that my water is added, I'm gonna get the total weight of everything and subtract the weight of the glass. Put this back on grams. That is 1,188 grams. Minus 418. 770 grams of both liquid and peppers. So now we're going to take the 770 grams of the total weight of what my ferment is going to be, and we're going to multiply that by 0.025, which is 2.5%. That's the percentage of salt I like to use in all my ferments. It's a plenty safe amount of salt, but not too much salt so that my ferments are salty. So 770 times 0.025, and I've been working in grams this whole time, so my answer is going to come out in grams. I have 19.25 grams of salt, which I now need to weigh out. So I have a little container here I like to use to measure out like yeast or salt or little small amounts of things I need. Put that on there, zero it out, and let's get 19.25 grams. 20, 19. It said 20, then 19. I'm assuming it's in the upper 19. This isn't a super fancy what is this called? Scale. Yeah, that'll work. So you want to get the salt plenty dissolved in the water. And since you've already poured it in here, the easiest way to do that is get another clean cup, pour your water out, or at least a majority of it. And then add your salt in and make sure it's completely dissolved in here before you just pour this brine right back in your jar. So this is mostly dissolved. I have a few grains of salt on the bottom, but that's not an issue. And we're just gonna pour that brine right back in here. Now, if you're familiar with canning, you know you wanna get air bubbles out before you can your products. This is a tool for canning that I just use down here. Make sure I've got no air bubbles down the sides. Remember, we want an oxygen-free environment. And then I'm just gonna push these peppers down. Obviously, your vegetables are going to be sitting in water, which means they are going to want to float. So you're going to need something on top of this water to make the vegetables sit submerged. Now what I have here is called the glass fermentation weight. And what it's going to do, and hold this, I just washed it off to make sure there was no soap on there. Is it's going to sit inside of here and push all these vegetables down so that they are submerged underneath the water. But this is absolutely, let me get some light in here. This is absolutely not necessary. I bought these this year for the first time. You can use anything. What I've used in the past is just plastic wrap. And I pushed down the vegetables, laid the plastic wrap over so that there was water on top of the plastic wrap, and that kept them submerged. You can use a plastic like Ziploc bag filled with water, press it down into the jar to keep it submerged. See, this is what I mean by all the little pepper seeds floating around in here. It just bothers me. That's normally why I like to take them out. But the main thing is you need to keep this submerged. You can use cabbage leaves, grape leaves, anything that keeps all of your stuff underneath the water in an oxygenless environment. These fermentation weights aren't super expensive. They also aren't super cheap. I think I got a 4-pack for maybe 20 bucks. What's up, Grady?
Can I have some milk?
Yeah, you wanna say hi to everybody?
Hi.
Want some milk?
Yeah?
Okay, where's your cup?
I don't know.
Is it in your room? Will you go check for me before I pull out another one, please? And then, once you have all of your vegetables completely submerged, you're going to want to place a lid on it, but you do not want an airtight lid. Now this lid is also something new that I have not had before. It's a special fermentation lid that has a hole here in the top and allows air to escape. But I have also just screwed the plastic top on very loosely and checked it once every couple days, unscrewed the lid, see if there was any air that needed to come out, and then put it back on. This, in theory, will let air come out of this hole without you having to come and unscrew your ferments. I still check on mine almost every day just because I like to monitor the process, make sure I don't have anything going wrong with my ferments. I've never had. And that's about it. I'm just going to screw this lid over this fancy little top, and it will sit in a dark part of my house for probably a week. It's pretty warm here, so probably a week. It is important that you burp your ferments if you don't have a specific airlock like this to let air out, because like I said, once the lactic acid bacteria take hold, they're going to start producing a lot of carbon dioxide. You'll see bubbles coming up the side. That's good. That means it's working. But you could explode your jar if you seal the top and it's airtight, and nobody wants to clean that mess up. So that is it. I'm sure this is going to be a super long video, guys. I'm sorry. I will absolutely do like an in-depth fermentation video, like informative. If you want, let me know down in the comments below. But this is how I ferment my hot peppers for fermented salsa. And I do have a jar I can show you. So these are the plastic lids I was talking about, the plastic mason jar lids that I just use for my ferments and my pickles. And then this was the last batch of salsa that I did. It started out like this.
Never mind.
Never mind?
Yeah, because I already do have a cup.
Well, you want to bring it so I can give you some milk?
No.
Oh, okay.
Because I have water and I didn't finish.
Oh, right. And then I just put it in the blender and make this delicious salsa. It is, smells so good. And they will taste different depending on the peppers that you put in. Like I told you before, I really do want to make a salsa completely out of sugar rush peach peppers. I just haven't gotten enough lately. So for now, we're just doing a mixture of peppers, all hot. And soon I'll have a quart-sized jar of fermented peppers. How exciting. They're good to eat whole too, but I prefer them in a salsa because they're really spicy. Well, I'm gonna get going. Thank you guys for joining me, and I will catch you on the next one.